Coming up today, lawmakers take aim at senior military officers for their failure to detect a recent border infiltration by North Korean troops. The landmines they laid maimed 2 South Korean soldiers last week. Global financial markets and oil prices fall off a cliff as China devalues its currency for a second straight day. Plus, the jobless rate edges down as the Korean economy adds more than 300,000 new jobs in July. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 12th of August. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with the political reaction to the latest security breach at the inter-Korean border. Lawmakers from the ruling and main opposition party have lashed out at senior military officers for failing to detect North Korean soldiers who laid landmines after sneaking across the military demarcation line. At a Parliamentary Defence Committee meeting today, ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers demanded the government punish those in charge of guard duty and strengthen military discipline. Lawmakers from the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy said the incident and the poor initial response had exposed the military's weaknesses. Outlining their response measures, military officials said loudspeaker propaganda broadcasts have been reinstated in 2 frontline regions. They added that reconnaissance in so-called blind areas along the border has also been fortified. 2 South Korean soldiers who were seriously wounded last Tuesday when the mines exploded are still receiving treatment for their injuries. South Korean military is also reviewing another countermeasure following the landmine explosions at the DMZ. It might carry out some controlled burns of wooded areas so South Korean troops have a clearer view of the border. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea's defense ministry is considering reinstating an old policy of burning trees and scrubs on the border if they hinder the ability of troops to spot enemy movements. The tactic was used in the past, but was halted in the early 1990s. Fire is the chosen method over cutting, given the number of landmines in the area. The method would only be used in small areas. It would also be undertaken in urgent circumstances.
We will strengthen our border defense so North Korean troops will not be able to cross. We also plan to remove trees and parts of the DMZ to enhance surveillance.
A military official said that if the tree clearing operation gets the green light, the burns will take place in the fall as the land is driest then. In 2001, the 2 Koreas officially agreed to halt burns at the border to better preserve the ecology of the area. Experts say the possible reintroduction of the tree and scrub clearing operations indicates the South Korean military wants to take a more offensive approach in dealing with border infiltrations. This comes as the defense ministry confirmed this week that North Korean soldiers snuck across the military demarcation line late last month to lay landmines around a gate guarded by the South Korean military. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And in related news, the US government has slammed North Korea for planting those landmines that exploded in the DMZ around a week ago, severely injuring 2 South Korean soldiers. In a statement released on Tuesday, the State Department's deputy spokesman, Mark Toner, said the North violated sections of the armistice agreement by placing mines along a known South Korean patrol route. He added the US joins the UN command in condemning the North's violations of the agreement. The spokesman also said Washington extends its deepest sympathies to the injured soldiers and their families and reiterated that Washington continues to be in close cooperation and communication with South Korea. Now, in other news, China set its currency lower again today after its surprise devaluation of the yuan yesterday for the first time in more than 20 years. The decision has driven investors to safer assets on worries the Chinese authorities had to take action to curb the country's slowing growth momentum. Song Ji-son reports.
China pushed down the value of its currency for a second day, setting another 1.6% lower on Wednesday, after lowering 1.86% the day before. Tuesday's devaluation was the biggest one-day fall since a massive devaluation in 1994, when China aligned its official and market rates. The devaluations follow weakened data that showed China's exports tumbled 8% last month, hit by weaker demand from Europe, the US and Japan, and that producer prices had entered a fourth year of deflation. The action sent stock markets across the globe spinning, with prices of raw materials and crude oil also dropping sharply. Investors appeared worried that the decision is a sign of Beijing's own growing concern about its sliding economic growth rate and its ability to bolster growth. Demand for safer assets pushed down bond yields in the US and Europe. Beijing's action also weighs heavy on the US Fed and could force it to delay a rate hike previously expected in the second half of the year. For China, the benefits are clear. A cheaper yuan will boost exports by making them less expensive in overseas markets. And as China is Korea's biggest trading and export partner, stronger demand and growth in Beijing will also benefit Seoul in the long run. But Korean goods also compete with Chinese exports in the global market, and the competition could get tougher as Beijing's currency devaluation takes hold. 송지선, Arirang News.
Now, in an apology yesterday, Lotte Group chairman Shin Dong-bin vowed to increase transparency and restructure the group. A new report shows Korea's fifth largest conglomerate will need more than $2 billion to untangle its complicated web of cross-shareholding arrangements. Kim Min-ji reports.
$2.1 billion. That's how much Lotte Group will need to resolve the problem stemming from its complex cross-shareholding structure. The Korean Japan-based conglomerate has 416 cross-shareholding arrangements. Together, they allow the founding family to control the group with a relatively small amount of shares. Market Tracker CEO Score says Lotte will need to clear the stakes held by 6 affiliates and 3 key subsidiaries, Lotte Shopping, Lotte Confectionery, and Lotte Chilsung Beverage, in order to break up the current shareholding structure. The 6 affiliates hold more than $2 billion worth of shares in the other 3 companies. Experts say due to the complex structure that stretches between Korea and Japan, only time will tell if and when the process will be implemented. The report comes a day after Lotte chairman Shin Dong-bin issued an apology to mitigate the growing negative sentiment against the retail giant amid a bitter succession battle between him and his older brother. Shin vowed to resolve 80% of the problems with the group's cross-shareholding system and pursue a public listing for Hotel Lotte, the de facto holding company of the group's operations in Korea. A separate report shows that less than 10% of Lotte Group affiliates are listed, further demonstrating a need for the group to become more transparent. According to industry tracker Jebel.com, only 8 subsidiaries were listed among 81 Lotte affiliates. That puts Lotte Group at the bottom of the nation's top 10 conglomerates, where the average is 16%. If Hotel Lotte is listed as promised, it would only raise the percentage of listed group affiliates to 11%, still far below the average of its corporate peers. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Around 326,000 new jobs were added to Korea's job market on year in July. Statistics Korea said Wednesday that despite the recent MERS outbreak, it's the 3rd straight month that more than 300,000 people were newly employed. This is especially attributed to an on-year addition of 170,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector. Hiring in the agro-fishery, finance and service sectors was weak, though. The unemployment rate in July stood at 3.7%, slightly down from the month before. However, it was up from the same month last year. So the agency says it's too early to assess whether the economy has completely recovered from the recent MERS outbreak. Koreans who work at smaller firms earn roughly $20,000 less than their corporate counterparts, once again highlighting the nation's worsening income gap. A report by the Korea CXO Institute says the average salary at big companies was $53,000 in 2014, and the corresponding figure for smaller companies was $33,000, or about 38% less. Employees at Mejion Pharma earned the highest salaries on average, with $102,000, but in general, the highest paid workers were at oil refineries, including S-Oil, SK Energy and GS Caltex. The study surveyed the salaries at 2,000 companies from last year. Financial companies and special interest entities were excluded. A new poll shows nearly 4 out of 10 Koreans believe the country's rural development project, or the Semaul movement, contributed most to Korea's economic development. Most Koreans also think Korea acts as a bridge between developed and developing economies. Son Jung-in reports.
The Federation of Korean Industries conducted a poll on 800 adults ahead of this week's National Liberation Day. The survey showed that 39% of the respondents viewed the Semaul movement, an agricultural and rural reform drive in the 1970s and 80s, as the main reason Korea's economy expanded so rapidly. 33% chose Korea's 5-year economic development plans, followed by the Seoul Summer Olympics in 1988 and the 2002 FIFA World Cup. As for the force that drove Korea's growth, 59% chose Koreans' strong determination for a better life, followed by talented individuals with high levels of education and political leadership and systematic governmental policy. Half of the respondents said the Asian financial crisis in 1997 was the worst national economic crisis. Most people perceived Korea as semi-developed or in the upper middle level of world economies. A higher number of people wanted Korea to be richer, more than those who wanted the country to be a more mature democracy. According to the poll, Koreans think creating more jobs for young people and protecting those struggling to make ends meet are the most important tasks currently facing Asia's 4th largest economy. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, 5 former Japanese prime ministers have raised strong opposition against a set of national security bills that seek to expand the role of Japan's military overseas. According to Tokyo-based Kyodo News Agency on Tuesday, a group of some 50 former Japanese journalists asked former national leaders to join their campaign against the contentious legislation. Of the 12 former prime ministers who were asked, 5, including Naoto Kan and Tomiichi Murayama, expressed their will to participate. Naoto Kan is urging Abe to resign, saying he's not qualified to be the prime minister of a democratic country if he violates the constitution. Murayama sided with Kan, adding that they can no longer tolerate Abe's attitude that disregards the voice of the people. A collection of maps that prove Dokdo is Korean territory has gone on display at the National Assembly just days before Korea celebrates its liberation from Japan 70 years ago. Park Ji-won reports.
You can see about 90 maps from Europe, Korea and Japan dating from the 16th century to the 20th century. The Dokdo Foundation and the National Assembly Special Committee are co-hosting the exhibit. Japanese historian Norio Kuboi has been collecting the maps for about 30 years. He says historical documents clearly show Dokdo is Korean territory. Korea's 2 eastern islands, Ulleungdo and Dokdo, are clearly marked on this map of Korea from the early 18th century, proving the islands are Korean territory. This map, made in 1895 by a German scholar, also shows Dokdo, then labeled as the Liangkor Rocks, as belonging to Korea. The rocks are shaded in light purple, the same color of Korea on the map. Japanese maps also prove Japan did not consider Dokdo its territory. Japan made this map in 1811. Neither Ulleungdo Island or Dokdo are outlined with any color, indicating they are not Japanese territory. This official map by Japan's Interior Department in 1880 did not include Dokdo as its territory. Another map from 1905 identified the 2 islands as Korean territory. Kuboi says after conducting its own research, he became convinced Dokdo belongs to Korea.
The Japanese government has named Tokdo as Japan's Takashima and ordered Japanese teachers to say it belongs to Japan, but I couldn't teach wrong facts.
Kuboi says the Japanese government has never released these documents, but relies on a few unorthodox documents to prove Tokdo has belonged to Japan. He has even received death threats from far-rightists in his own country over his work to prove Tokdo is Korean territory. But the fearless scholar has not backed down. He says he wants people to know the true history.
As a historian, I'm convinced Tokdo is Korean territory, and I think it's wrong that Japan teaches its people that the island belongs to Japan.
The exhibition continues until Thursday at the lobby of National Assembly members' office building. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Well, those are the stories we're following on this Wednesday afternoon in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.com/news. And it's also worth downloading our smartphone application. You can search for it by going to Arirang TV. Have a great day. Goodbye.